attention? All right.
All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to award-winning editing for short features. My name is Hailee Boston.
I am Jesse Wilson. We practiced this without a microphone, so this will be fun, handing the microphone back and forth. How many people here are just shooters? You're just doing videography for your community. Anybody? The shooter in the back of the room? You do a little bit of shooting. Just editing? Anybody just editing? Completely editors? No, you're all shooter editors, yes? Yes, okay. Anybody use Vegas for editing?
I used to.
Used to use Vegas. Premiere? Premiere, is that the pretty much industry standard here? Anybody use DaVinci Resolve? DaVinci Resolve, of course you do. DaVinci Resolve is great. I used DaVinci Resolve later on here. We're going to go through kind of one of my timelines in DaVinci Resolve, which is kind of a fun program. Like I said, I am Jesse Wilson. I am a documentary filmmaker from central Wisconsin, or south central Wisconsin. I've done a little bit of everything from director of photography, cinematography. I'm a certified drone pilot, like I think many of you are doing drones in your communities, and editor. The music videos, short films, and some of the other video productions have won awards in some of the following film festivals. And there's some other accolades there that some of my features have been in. We're gonna do a lot of video examples. We think that nothing is better to learn from than somebody who's better than you. So we picked out clips that are better than us. This first one is me. So this was a short that I did. I got reached out to by the fire department the night before, so there wasn't a lot of planning, but we wanted to build a little story. So hopefully this doesn't blow your eardrums out here, because it sounded like it might be loud.
Growing up, I always loved fire trucks, loved the flashing lights and the sirens.
Here, I'll pause it. Do we have a sound control box? Right on the speaker itself. Yep. I see it. I'm not sure. I'm going to play it, so sorry your ears. No, we got this. We'll work through it.
Growing up, I always loved fire trucks, loved the flashing lights and the sirens, but who doesn't?
How's that? That okay?
Growing up, I always wanted to help people. My grandma was the executive director of the United Way of Dodge County throughout my whole life, so I've grown up helping her give back to the community. And so it's just really instilled this notion of wanting to give back, helping other people, not just helping myself. Because we've always found that in the end, if you help, you always be helped. You'll always get back what you give. And so that's what I love about the fire services. You're always giving, you're always serving people, but there's so much reward in it. You get so much back. I joined the cadet program, and I got to put on the gear, and I got to ride the fire truck, and I got to hook up to a fire hydrant, and it just opened my eyes, and it just created that amazing, created that love for the job. Today we'll be going out and moving hose around, putting out the fire, setting up water operations with different fire trucks, and working with other departments that are around the area.
Company on the back 13. Truck, this is County, but you're on scene. Headed to the forcible in.
This is such a great opportunity because you don't get to burn a house down every day, and on purpose. You don't get to go around, put water on fire on purpose, and not be an emergency. Be able to take time, sit back, and actually watch, and be able to watch. You're able to learn. You're able to watch how the fire burns and how it affects everything, and how fast it really can go from 0 to 60. just it was cool how to see everything just go out and all of a sudden, boom, there's a fire. Because for a while there, I couldn't see my hand, but then once you open that window, the fire was like right there. We let it blow up, came across the ceiling and put it out again. So that's cool. Oh, yeah.
That's all you get.
Thanks that fire inside of me for being able to do what I do, because it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yep.
That's all she wrote.
You gotta be your own self-advocate. You wanna try something, all you gotta do is just take that first step. For me, that first step was to join a cadet program. Before it was just a thought. It was just, hey, I could be a firefighter, but it's hard, there's a lot of stuff. But then I took that first step, and I joined the cadet program, and I learned how to love the job, and here I am, doing this. This is awesome. I don't know what I don't know yet. I'm still learning the ropes. I'm just starting, really.
All right. So, as previously mentioned, my name is Hailee Boss.
Keep talking and I'll try. Go ahead, Hailee. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, it's there a little bit. Okay. I'm originally from Milwaukee and now live in St. Paul. I've been with the city of Eagan for just about 6 years now. I started in 2016 as their production assistant, and then in 2018 moved on to programming coordinator. And most recently, within the last month, I became a senior producer of video and digital content. So with my role, I produce short and long form videos for the city's social media channels, as well as for our internal employees, and help manage our digital brand. So I also have a feature that I am sharing with you today. It is a retirement video I created for our previous city administrator, Dave Osberg. He recently retired in March after 40 years of public service. This one was an interesting challenge as it incorporates 19 interviews in under 6 minutes. So that was a new challenge for me.
You can count on him. He's very consistent.
Very outgoing.
Very confident and self-assured.
He brought just a vibrancy to the office.
When he walks into a room, he carries like a certain energy about him.
His leadership skills are phenomenal.
He just keeps things moving, very professional.
He's hardworking and he's loyal.
When we first met, we were both freshmen in college at St. Ben's and St. John's. He was always a government major, so this seemed like a natural progression for him.
When I graduated from St. John's, I went to grad school at Mankato State, and Dr. Barrett kind of set me to Tom Hedges to apply for an internship program. So I kind of stumbled upon the profession.
He was a new city administrator in the city of Hastings. Right around 1989, I knew he would bring a great set of skills when he came here to the city of Eagan, because we had the benefit of Dave's leadership, ability to communicate, a sense of caring in our community in Hastings.
Coming back to Eagan, knowing that this would probably be his last stint, I think he was very excited about that opportunity as well.
This would be the job as city administrator where he would retire someday, and that's what's happening.
At the time I started, the Twin City Premium Outlet Mall was essentially breaking ground. Central Park Commons and of course the Viking Lakes development. It was satisfying to be a part of those and working with the staff and the city council to get those through.
He's represented the city extremely well. He really epitomizes a leader.
We kind of had two mantras for us. One of them was to be a leader, and the other one was to be proactive and not reactive. Personally and professionally, I feel like I took those to heart.
One of the things that I'm most proud of is kind of continuing the good tradition of customer service to the public here in Eagan.
When you get to know Dave and you work with Dave, you can see the passion that he has for public service.
He's eminently likable. In this business, it's hard to please everyone, but you can earn their trust, and Dave has done that. says what he'll do, and he actually sticks it out and does it.
You could just see that he had that personality that could deal with a million cats coming at him all the time.
He also just always understood that there's more than one side to a story. There's always something more we can learn, and there's not just one way of doing something.
What is unique about Dave and what I think he brought to the city was a sense of there's a time to do all that work and take it all very seriously. There's a time also to pay attention to yourself and to your staff as people, and to realize that you work to live and you don't live to work.
Dave always talked about the number one priority had to be your family, had to be your personal life. And as long as that came together, a lot of the other pieces of life will fall together, including your work.
Just give him a lot of good advice, and it's been fun to work with him.
I'm gonna miss the people. You know, we have a great staff at the city of Eagan, and it's been fun to kind of build a staff, if you will.
I really appreciated all the efforts that Dave made to just help us unite together as a team.
He's able to pull together a team of highly performing people and help them become the best that they can be.
He's expected us and empowered us to solve our own problems.
Dave is a supportive guy, but he doesn't have to be involved in the mix to show that support and to really have that influence.
You know, he was very, very easy to talk to and help navigate the challenging times, and he'll be missed.
You know, at some point in time, you just gotta say enough's enough, and other people can do this job too, and we wish nothing but the best for Diane Miller, who will be the next city administrator. So it just seemed right. I'm just looking forward to enjoying it, and you know, my Tuesday nights will be free.
My advice for Dave in retirement is to buy a new set of clubs.
If you don't have a tea time in the morning, stay up late and sleep in. If you do have a tea time in the morning, make sure to call me.
Buy some season tickets, don't answer my phone calls. And I say that jokingly.
Do what Lori says. Don't argue with Lori.
Relax, don't think about work.
Retirement isn't the end of your life, but it might be the end of your bank account. So.
Dave, I'm very excited that you'll be joining me in retirement. Looking forward to our travels and our adventures in this next phase of our lives. I love you.
Congratulations, Dad. Happy retirement.
Congrats, Dad. Congratulations on your retirement. I'm very proud of you.
40 years of public service. We are so grateful.
Thanks, Dave.
Best of luck, Dave.
Thanks for everything, Dave.
Dave, thanks for the time that you've given the city of Eagan. I want you to come back and visit us as often as you like.
Have fun. You deserve this.
I want to thank you for being an excellent city administrator, a valued colleague, and a great friend.
I just want to thank everyone who's been very supportive over the last 9 years or so. Appreciate the council showing their support for me and their confidence back in 2013 when they hired me to replace Tom Hedges, and I'll miss all of you, and I wish you all nothing but the best, and I want to thank you for a great 9 years here in Eagan, and for all of those elsewhere watching a great 4 years in city administration, so thank you very much.
Yeah, that was really good. Since we're covering short features, we wanted to kind of define what a short feature was. Traditionally in the documentary world, a short is under 15 minutes and is focusing on a very specific event or a moment in time. So my example was the firefighter at the house burn. So it was a short focusing on that event. 30 minutes are the short feature category, and under. Those are going to have a deeper backstory, and those are the ones that you're going to have more layers. You're going to have more people talking about the subject or the subject matter, as well as kind of getting into those different multi-dimensions, which is what makes a great short film. This code here, actually, we'll have another code at the end with the full presentation, but this one will take you to The Long Goodbye, which won this year's Oscars for Best Short Feature. It was really good. If you have a chance to watch it, really great reference of kind of going deeper into a really light story and kind of hitting on some of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about today.
All right, moving on to foundations of editing. On a foundational level, let's talk about the role the editor plays in the production. So we've got this definition here. The responsibilities and skills in the job of editing a film involve rhythm, instinct, emotion, psychology, art. and it draws from the total talent of one person, the editor, who collaborates with the film director to create a cumulative sensory event. An editor organizes minutia, intensifies subtleties, heightens emotions, and blends countless elements of image and sound to create a film.
We thought it was important to define this because I think when we first got this subject, we were like, I mean, we just edit. We don't really necessarily have a definition. So I thought these were really good definitions that kind of highlight exactly it is what we're doing. So I mean, it's not something I've ever thought of. So hopefully that's something that you guys get something out of as well.
All right, so moving on to organizing your edit. When you're starting a new video project, it's really easy to want to get really excited and want to jump in right away. It'll be beneficial to you later if you take the time to organize right from the very beginning. So first point here, make sure you organize your files. Have a folder structure to keep all your files clean and in one place. Ease in re-edits and pulling old footage to find files. It's really easy to get yourself into a wormhole of having a bunch of content to deal with, so making sure that you're keeping everything clean and organized there. Maintain consistent file structure. This allows your staff or other editors to jump into projects without being completely lost. In the government sector, we at Eagan, we have a lot of our part-time employees, and they both shoot and edit, and making it easier for people to step in where they need to based on the various projects that we're working on. And the goal of all this is to eliminate frustration and save time. We all work on a lot of projects during the year, and sometimes we need to go back and reference some of those older projects. I know in Eagan, we've got a lot of annual events that we do. And so we'll go back and pull footage from some of those events from previous years for new promos in the next years. So just keeping yourself organized makes that process a lot easier. So I talked about file structures. We thought it'd be cool to have two examples of file structures here. On the left is what I use, and on the right is what Jesse uses. So something to stress is that there isn't one correct way to structure your files. It really depends on what works best for you and for your organization.
Yeah, and being consistent, I think, is the last piece of that, because that's why I do mine that way. It looks intense, but... what to look for while you're editing. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of what I think hopefully everybody's doing here, wanting to grow and get better. So picking a time to make a change in a scene or in a change of angle. I think this is really important because if you're editing right in the middle of somebody blinking or having a conversation with somebody and you don't have another angle, you're going to have some abrupt things happen. And I think in the judging of some of the films this year for the Media Fest, I noticed some people had transitions or from shot to shot that weren't very consistent, and you lose that continuity. And I think sometimes they make behind the scenes of films that are just the continuity errors. So that's something to be really aware of. Being intentional is really important as well. Getting rid of those scenes or things that don't move, the shots that don't move the film forward is really important, because again, going back to the Film Fest judging, there were a lot of people that there was information, but it wasn't adding anything new, and we were kind of repeating the same thing. So does this add new information? And finally, less narration, more visual storytelling. I think the award-winning films are not having somebody narrate the whole thing. X is doing X. This is what you can tell what somebody's doing, right, when you're watching. We're going to show a clip here actually from Train Surfers. This is also an award-winning film, independent short. They do a really good job of using very little narration, visual storytelling, kind of hitting something on some of these points. So we'll see if this one plays all the way through.
yang मैं आता हूँ घर पे से शुरू होता है नीचे नीचे आता हूँ, उसके बाद में फिर पहले सिगरेट पीता हूँ, उसके बाद में दूसरी सिगरेट लेता हूँ, एक सिगरेट होता है पूरा, दूसरी सिगरेट करने में एक साथ पीता हूँ, और ये बाद में यहाँ दोस्तों के साथ में बैठता हूँ। ऐसा हो गया 12 घंटे ही नींद मांगता हूँ। उसके बाद में कितना भी दिन जागने का रहेगा मैं जाग सकता हूँ, नाइट में घूमना।
आणि रात्री इथे इथे फिरतो, मावालीगिरी करत बसतो.
लड़कियों के साथ मस्ती मजाक करना, झगड़े करना, और स्कूल में स्टूडेंट लोग से मार पीट के मतलब अपने लड़के लोग को दोस्तों को बेच के पैसे वैसे छीनना।
चौबले एवढी मावालीगिरी करतो, एक दिवशी आम्ही असा मार खाणार आहे.
I'm going to try to do this while I'm showing you this next piece here. I'm going to switch to, so that was a pretty cool example, right? Everybody see the example of how they're just kind of letting the story tell itself without mansplaining things too much? So we wanted to kind of show an example of a timeline of what that kind of looks like when you have proper organization, and kind of, this is kind of my normal workflow. I actually filmed, so I actually shot this last weekend. We had a Fair Food Fest, and this is kind of the edit that I have. So going back to organization, we think organization in file structure is important for finding those files. Organization inside your project window, inside your project is... Jesse, you gotta go that way. Sorry, man. That's all right. I can move. Thank you. So, thank you. So, file folder structure, this is kind of how I organize, very similar to how I lay things out. I put my drone stuff separate because sometimes that's important. This is just an old reference file. I had to use some extra clips. With that, so I'm winging it, not off my notes here, but I'd like to do things in a very specific order. I always do interviews first, and I think the reason you want to do interviews first is so that way you know the content. A lot of us are shooter editors, so we know the content. Those who are just editors, maybe you're helping somebody out on a project that they shot, you need to do it. It was a weekend that you're not available. I think this situation happens a lot. Getting to know those sound bites, labeling it in a way so that way you can pull things quickly. Sometimes I put spellings of people's names if I want to use them in markers. I think markers are really important. B-roll, I do the same thing with B-roll. I line up all my B-roll in a single line. Again, using markers, using whatever kind of annotations that your editing software has, and I just give it a general name so that way I can go right to the cheese curd guy, pull that file once I start doing my more robust edit. From there, I start laying the interviews out, and at this point, I'm actually starting to add music. Oh, don't do that. I'm starting to add music too because I want to get that feel, right? The Train Surfers, I thought the songs really just drove that forward. So I'm laying in different tracks. I usually have a ton more music than I need just so that way I can kind of listen to a little bit of different things. Hopefully all of you have some sort of stock music site that you're using stuff from. Yes, nods, good, okay. And then the other thing in the timeline is I always duplicate timeline. So I'm never working from the same timeline twice. So if I go take a coffee break or a walk or I have to run into town, I'll create a new version of that. I also do a new version whenever I have a significant change. So this isn't a completed edit, but once I get there, so here's just interviews and music, and then here I'm actually adding B-roll. We can make this bigger so you can see, hopefully. So you can, I'm using B-roll, I'm coloring the clips, drone clips I always do different so that way I know when I'm pulling in and pulling out or coming in from from a drone shot. So this is kind of my layout. Anybody? Yes?
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on why you choose to keep making additional time?
Yeah, so I think we all have clients, right? Whether it's a department, whether it's, these aren't necessarily personal films. So when you're 2 or 3 drafts into getting approval, which can be an exhaustive process in government, if they say, you know what, actually your second draft, I like that version better, you can go back to that. So any changes you made are gonna still be in there. I can't even count the number of times where I've made a bunch of edits, I go for a walk, I take a couple days off from editing, I come back and I'm like, this isn't what I want to bring this clip back in. And again, the organization of the B-roll, the organization of your interviews helps with that. But having that timeline there, redundancy in that aspect, I think is really important. Any other questions about this? Make sense? Awesome, cool. We're gonna jump back to the presentation. I feel like we need transition music.
Yeah. All right, so I wanted to get started here with a favorite quote of mine from Scorsese's editor, Thelma Schoonmaker. When asked, how can such a nice lady edit violent gangster pictures, she responded with, but they aren't violent until I've edited them. I wanted to add the quote in because I think it functions well as a testament to how much power the editor has in setting the tone of the product. On that note, let's talk creating scenes. So scenes are made up of a collection of shots that help tell your story. They give bits of information ahead of time to show the viewer what you are going into detail about later. They also develop tension. You want to make sure that your viewers are, you're keeping their attention the entire time, so developing that tension will help keep them connected to the piece. A few things to look out for while you're building your scenes are continuity, weird cuts, and you want to ask yourself, spatially, does it make sense? So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of talk about some editing mistakes. So these are ones that I've made and have fallen victim to, and I'm sure others have as well. So the first one being a lack of audio consistency, having the music louder than the interviews or having one interview louder than another one. Not enough screen time for graphics. If you incorporate words in your video, you want to make sure that you have enough time for your viewer to actually read the words before you move on to the next section there. Botched jobs on audio correction. A video I made, I had 4 interviews and one of them, the audio didn't turn out super great. So I tried to correct it and it ended up sounding super, super hollow and was even worse than it was before. Unfortunately, which leads to a tip here, is to make sure that you are listening to your video in various different outputs. So for me, I'd only listen to it through headphones. And then when it played in an auditorium with really big speakers, I heard all of the mistakes. So yeah, just making sure that you're watching for that kind of stuff. Over color correcting. And what I mean by this is sometimes you look at something for too long and you start getting really nitpicky with the color and moving things back and forth because you can't decide. And sometimes when you go too far, you end up ruining it. So just kind of making sure to stay conscious of that. Not organizing, going back to what we talked about earlier, making sure to take that time early on to organize your edit to avoid spending extra time later. And lastly, rushing through an edit and missing key details. In the public access and city government sector, we don't always have a ton of time to work on our projects, but it's really important to make sure you're giving those extra looks before you hit the export button.
Yeah, I think editing mistakes is good because it helps you learn from other people's issues, right? So here are some mistakes that I've made, some mistakes that I've seen in editors and other contests that I've judged. Holding your shot too long. Once you have all the information, we don't need to stay there, right? I think I had watched a video recently where it was, we were looking at a DPW station and it was just a long shot of trucks kind of slowly moving in and out, but it didn't add anything for me, and you become bored, and even watching a film, you'll get to the point where you're like, I need to turn this off because you just don't care anymore. Watch your interviews first, especially if you're doing a lot of different projects, you want to remember what the conversations were, making those marks on them so that way you can go back and be like, this is the soundbite I need from X. And I think a lot of news guys actually are making notes while they're editing. So watch your time code when you're shooting too, if you are a shooter. Good example of, anyway, timelines, watch your interviews first. Hard cuts between scenes is a big mistake that I would say is probably the most annoying one, because there's a lot of things you can do to make a transition, right? We went from the firehouse and interviewing Anthony to a drone shot of the new location. It pulls us out of a scene and brings us into a new one. So most of you should have drones. Please use them and get nice cinematic shots. We don't need all racing, although I did a little bit of that because I wanted to do something fun. Not taking breaks is a big mistake that people make. I think it's so easy to just want to get something done really fast, and taking that time to go for a walk, even letting a project rest for a couple of days to come at it with a fresh mind is really, really important. Duplicating timelines again. I've had a lot of instances where I'm working on a short feature that we're planning on submitting to a film festival, and we hire an editor or we hire a colorist that's going to work on it, and he says this story doesn't work, or the client comes back and says, you know what, I passed this down the chain, they said this wasn't good enough, we need to do something better or make a change back. So duplicate your timelines. It's going to save you a ton of time when you're working on some pretty longer projects. Not getting familiar with your editing software is a huge one, because I see some really simple mistakes made in editing that I think some time in the editing software would make a big difference. DaVinci Resolve is a good example of a different software that none of you use or haven't used. Working on that on the smaller projects to get familiar with the features is really nice, and I am pretty proficient in most of them, Premiere and Resolve and Final Cut. I don't use Vegas, but it helps. Get familiar with your editing. Too much voiceover. This is a big, big problem that I think a lot of journalists, when you watch the news, they're narrating the whole thing. But we can tell there's cop cars. We can tell something's going on. For you to talk to us like that, I think is kind of redundant. So with that last point, we're going to watch another short. This was done by The New Yorker. We're just going to watch the first minute or so. But it does a good example of hitting Hailee and I's information here. So watch it and you'll kind of see what we're talking about.
Okay, we're squared away. Hey, look at that scene through the trees, isn't it? Those trees are so beautiful. You want to draw that scene over there with the trees in front of the brownstones and the stairs and the cars and the street, so you want to make a cover out of that. You gotta look at it. You gotta sit and look at it. Nobody would ever photograph it the way I would see it as a cover.
People used to send him love letters. For years and years, George Booth would get letters from female readers proposing marriage to him. He was beloved. He's been beloved for decades here.
George Booth is a brilliant cartooning that has been a hallmark of The New Yorker for 50 years.
I've loved and known George Booth's cartoons my whole life. His style is so distinctive. There's one that's sort of famous. It's a yard sale cartoon where it's this woman and she's just surrounded by tables that are like piled high with crap. And then she goes, there's more inside. And yeah, I bet there is.
This one, the other was just lying down, and the trainer was saying, seems like some days I make a little progress, and other days it seems like I'm not getting anywhere at all. I mean, that was life.
I had sudden onset of
We'll cut it there. I know it was really good. Really cool. So it's a really good use of audio to tell a story, right? We're kind of in this guy's life and we don't know what to make of it, but that first couple minutes where you're really kind of drawn in, and I think a lot of us can tell that story in our communities with different people that are unique to a business, to an event, whether it's an elected official or just a citizen. I think there's a lot of cool stories out there, whether it's topic or character. We're on the next one. Some editing tips and tricks. Keeping your layers clean. I think in my example, you saw that I had some markers. I had color labels for each of the different clips that I want to use. I think that's important for going back and looking at it. Again, if you're taking long breaks and want to come back. So labels, markers, tagging. LUTs. Has anybody used LUTs in color grading? LUTs, sometimes they're really nice. LUTs are really, really nice for speeding up your color grade. When you want something to have a very specific look, maybe you build it ahead of time, maybe you're duplicating, maybe it's your style, right? Maybe it's I think it's a lighting lookup table. Lookup table is what LUT stands for. So it's technical, it's basically a color style. Attention, book time. Maybe it's in the morning when nobody's in the office. Maybe it's later in the evening. Turn your cell phones off. Turn your notifications off. Editing requires a lot of attention. Mistakes are permanent. Even watching mine, there were some issues that I have, and I have to look at it every time I show it to somebody. So use that as motivation to focus on the little things and make sure everything is really right before you push it out. Fresh eyes on your work and learn from others. I think these are kind of two that we can go together with. Getting somebody else's perspective is really good. There's always somebody in the film industry that's better than you, that's better than your community, better than you, better than me. I'm not the best, and we want to learn from each other. So I think let's keep that in mind when you're editing.
All right, moving on to scene transitions. So we've got two examples of scene transitions here. The first one being sound bridges. So these utilize sounds from the next scene in the previous seconds of the last scene to connect the two together. So this could be birds chirping, the sound of a car inside the car prior to being in the car. If we think back to Jesse's feature, if you remember, he's got kind of the drone sweeping over, and you can hear like the radio going before we're fully at the scene. So that's kind of a good example of that there. The next one we have here is visual transition. This is utilizing movement from one scene meshed with similar movement of the next scene to bridge the two scenes or moments together. This is one that I use a lot. I'll have a shot that's panning right, and then like the next shot continues on with that panning right. So keeping with that that similar movement there as opposed to going all over the place. You want to keep a cohesive movement. All right, audio. So audio is just as important as video. If you're watching a video and the audio is all blown out, you're going to remember the audio and not the video portion of it. Bad audio can destroy great video, and bad video can be saved by great audio. The narration, sound effects, and music all work together to help drive the message and add an extra layer of emotion. When picking out music, ask yourself, what is the desired tone? Is it dramatic? Is it light? Is it inspirational? Don't be afraid to experiment. Try out different options and styles until you find something that fits and evokes the proper emotion. Flow and pacing. Audio editing gives you the opportunity to eliminate and add pauses to speed up or slow down the pacing. Is your piece easygoing and slow, or is it tense and fast-paced?
Yeah, and I think to emphasize that, there are some film directors, short film directors, independent film directors, that will watch their film without any video. They'll just listen to the audio to give them that sense of, is the music driving things forward? Do the sound effects make sense? Is there a story within the sound? Because sound is everything, right? I mean, hopefully in the audio course they talked about good microphones and laving people and hooking people up. So I think sound is incredibly important.
All right, so we do have another example here. This one is produced by Patagonia and called Game Hawker. So this is a great example of using sound to help set the tone for your video. As you're watching, think about what type of emotion and tone they're trying to provoke and how they are achieving that.
The commitment to being a game hawker is big. This is a way of life.
Falconry gets its hooks into you so deeply.
Falconry is just this deep attachment to the bird.
We're attracted to animals that are powerful. People want to get close to that.
People think this is just such a romantic thing to do. They don't realize how difficult it is.
It's a lifestyle. I mean, it's just like having a child. It consumes all your time if you're going to do it right.
You've invested so much in this bird developing its potential that it just becomes all-consuming, and before you know it, this has taken over your entire life.
All right, so before I move on, I do have a question for anyone who'd like to answer this one. How would you describe, from what you've seen so far, how would you describe the tone of this video, and what elements did they use to achieve that? Anybody? No?
Solemn.
Solemn, okay. I saw your hand up there.
It seems like a very personal piece.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. I think if that microphone that they were using for that initial narration was like, you could hear his background in his apartment, or like, I think that would have taken everything out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and oh, did you have a note?
I was just going to say, the word that came to my mind was reverential.
Very good word. Great vocab word. Some things that I noted in this piece, the use of the acoustic guitar, it gives kind of a slight country feel to it. I don't know if you could hear here, but it's there's a very, very slight gnat sound of the hawk flapping its wings. And also the serious tone in the narration. Everyone who was speaking kind of had that solemn tone to their voice. So all of those aspects work together to create the desired emotion in that video.
Speed of music, too.
Yep.
Pacing.
Mm-hmm.
Color correction. This is probably the one that I think I noticed the most in judging this year's Film Fest was color correction. In color theory, you have kind of two different styles of color, right? You have color correction, you have color grading. Color correction is getting to the natural colors in the skin to create an environment that looks like what we see every day. Cameras do not shoot with the right contrast for every scene, right? So we're shooting in either a log format or a profile that's getting somewhat close. Color correction is going to take us over. With that, I always go in this order because, at least in DaVinci Resolve, when you're doing color correction or advanced color correction, each thing impacts the next because you're building nodes. Brightness, white balance, saturation, and then power windows. Power windows are, if you have a highlight, if you have a shadow, you can bring that up, isolate it. Same thing with light. Maybe you have a really warm scene and there's this blue light that's really distracting. You can change that to different colors. So that's power windows. So this is kind of the order I always go in, and that's to create your natural color grade or your color look. I would say this is as close to natural. There's obviously a cinematic grade on this, but yes, do you not like them?
So I will also add the projector I noticed is colors really, really red. So some of the other things you've seen have been more red than they should be.
Yeah, so this one I liked because it did have a really natural feel, right? The greens are there. His face has a good color. This one is off. The screen is a little better, but that's from The Quiet Place. It's, let's see, I have it here. That's right. I'll find it and I'll get back to you. If I can, if I have I'll always do a white card. Always do a white card. facing whatever light source you have. So that way at least you can get a white balance. But then I also have a color card that I use too. So then I match to a color card. Again, we're talking about award-winning short features. We're not talking about your council meetings. We're not talking about the city government stuff. We're talking about something that you want to have a very specific look and feel with.
It belongs to me. Come get it.
I know we all want to watch that all day long. It's a great scene. So color grading. So this is kind of the advanced thing when you're talking about award-winning films. They have a color grade on top of it, right? Color correction, we're trying to make it look as natural as and as human as our eyes see. Color grade is where we're changing the feel. Star Wars is the best example because not only do they use so much color, but green is good and red is bad, right? So like they create it through the whole film. So every scene you see with the dark side is red or has a darker tone, and it creates that. So they're creating that feel without you even knowing it. So what do you want your audience to feel? 300 is another great example of a very unique color grade period piece in the old days. I don't even know when it takes place, but it's a long time ago, right? So you want to feel like you're in that scene. What is a scene saying about the content? I think film noir films are fantastic. Sin City does a great job of going to a black and white, a hard black and white, like solid black and solid white, and they use red as kind of their ambient color. So then with that, what is your style? What do you want your film to say? How do you feel like you could better tell this story with color, right? Game Hawker was very warm. It had a Western kind of feel because he's this cowboy. It's really heavy subject matter, so it's something. I have another slide for this. Martin Scorsese did a great job when he shot The Irishman, and his editor, they did a great job of selecting the cameras they were going to shoot with ahead of time. So this film is like 60 hours long, but if you can sit through it, it's worth the watch. So Kodachrome was used. I don't know if anybody ever shot with Kodachrome, but Kodachrome was like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The natural film was Kodachrome. So that's what this look is. So Bob looks younger, ideally, right? He looks younger. He's seen in a different light early in the film, all the way up to high contrast, ENR, digital format to make him to emphasize that age. So like, right, I talked earlier about like we don't define what an editor is in our heads. We're just kind of naturally doing it. This is very intentional because they want you to feel how young he is because, I mean, you can only do so much to make somebody look young. So using those different kind of lighting, different kind of camera settings, different kind of color grades is really, really important. Questions on color grade? We're wrapping up here. We're going to get to a couple more things. Anybody have questions? Color grade? Heavy stuff.
All right. So we went over a lot of information today. So to close, we just wanted to leave with a few key takeaways. Number one, don't be redundant. Make sure your scenes are adding new information. Balance your interviews with series of stories, not just information. Edit should be a series of scenes and not just one long shot. Find a way to have characters tell a story instead of just listing off facts. Develop tension. Don't give all the information away up front. Have someone watch your film and offer feedback. They may see something that you didn't. Watch others' work so you can learn from them and grow your own skills. Let viewers live in a moment. Don't always tell people what is going on. Let them see what is happening in the moment. Good audio is better than good video. And deciding on a color grading style, what do you want your audience to feel? What is the scene saying?
Yes, those are all really good things. And I wish we could go into the pre-production and production side because I think how you ask your questions to create them telling stories is more important than what is your role, what is your title, how long you've been here. I think getting them to share examples is really important. We want to just say thank you to all you guys as filmmakers for coming to an event like this, for pushing each other forward. Hopefully you're able to take something away. We don't get appreciation, I think, enough in city government. I think we just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for coming here. It drives the film industry to be better and better every time. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you. If you want, scan this QR code. You can come up. We'll leave it up here for a little bit. This will take you to the presentation. We had a lot more slides that are hidden. You can find that. So if anybody wants to actually have this presentation, they can just scan that. And that'll be it. Did anybody want to talk about projects they're working on? I know we're right at time. Great job, Hailee. We did a lot of practice to make sure we were going to be right on time. I would say that you guys are free to leave if you want. If you want to talk about some projects you're working on, maybe you want to brainstorm, maybe you want to go through an idea, we can do that now. So I'll leave the QR code up. Maybe I should play some like interlude music. Oh, we do have another thing we can play. So everybody got that? So we got our contact information. Reach out to Hailee, ask her some questions. Give me a call. I might answer you. I might not. I might respond to your email. I might not. I don't know. That's our contact information as well. If you want that, you can come after. Thank you for coming. We're going to just play some award-winning. We have a video here from the Oscars. These are all award-winning films. It's going to blow your eardrums out. Right. So these are just Oscar-winning edits. So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. I'm Jesse. This is Hailee.